Welcome to Intercontinental Toastmasters. My name is Abhijit. Before we proceed, everyone, please mute your mics. Let me introduce our dynamic, the vivacious Toastmaster for today, Garsanai Amin. Garsanai, it's all you.
Thank you, Abhijit, for that wonderful, very passionate introduction. It's my absolute honor to be here, be the Toastmaster of the day, having Ray, Yuki, and Dennis with us. And today we are talking about how to write stories, how to have fun, and how to have of the humor. I want to share a quote before going to the introduction of our speakers. It says that people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do it. And I saw a common theme this across all our today's speakers, that they actually went and changed the way they were either perceiving themselves or how they were interacting with the world. So wonderful to have every one of you here. Dennis is a two-time distinguished Toastmaster, a past district governor, and district champion in the Tall Tales Humorous and Evaluation contests. Most recently, he took second place at the area level in the Table Topics contest. And he himself says that very humbly that he has much more to learn, which keeps him motivated in Toastmasters every week. And that's why we are also so blessed and happy to have you, Dennis, here today with us. Our other speaker is Ray Engan. Ray says that, and I can't believe Ray, you saying that right now, that he was a shy little boy who avoided talking to strangers by walking inside the safety of his mom's wraparound skirts. Today, he's an award-winning motivational speaker, coach, and storyteller. And this year, he created the program, The Humor Algorithm, which demystifies, I hope I'm pronouncing that name right, that's a word right, the process of humor and can make anyone funnier. He's the current president and CEO of Leadership Through Laughter, winner of both the International Speech and Humorous Speech contests at the district level, and he competed with and written for past world champions of public speaking finalists and champions. And Ray's currently the District 57's assistant district champion. Very, very happy having you, Ray, with us.
Wait a second. Can you say some more about Ray, please?
Would love to do
go
that.
on. Okay.
Yuki is also a distinguished, our next speaker is Yuki, and she is a distinguished Toastmaster and district finalist in the 2021 International Speech Contest. She loves to inspire and entertain her audience. She speaks to help people change their lives. So I'm gonna hand it over to our wonderful, awesome, fabulous speakers. Before going there, anyone who has a question can either raise their hand or write it down. And I want to challenge you, raise your hand and ask questions. And I'll be right here. If I miss it, Abhijit or Marguerite will jump in. And you can ask your question directly from the speakers. The speakers are right here. We are Intercontinental Toastmasters. Send your emails to me. Would love to have you guys. We are passionate. We are on fire in our club. Super awesome club. So come and join us. Okay. Apart from the promotion, now it's time for our wonderful speakers to be there. I can't wait to hear from Dennis, Ray, and Yuki. The floor is yours. Take it on and lead the way you want to lead it. Okay.
Thank you, Gaharsane. Welcome, everybody. I was very flattered to be invited to come speak about storytelling, given that I'm just me, and all I do is tell stories on occasion. But I'm essentially a very lazy person. So rather than come here by myself, I invited Yuki, who I know is a very fine storyteller, and of course Ray, because I figured he would do most of the talking throughout the evening. Before we get started, I recommend that everybody grab a pen and paper or whatever you use for taking notes. We'll have a couple of opportunities to write things down throughout the day. What we'll be talking about this evening is how you find a story to talk about. Once you find the story and you've developed it, how can you flip it and make it even better? How you can delight people with exciting dialogue, then pump it up with vivid voices, paint pretty pictures, hop up the humor, use a lot of alliteration, and then there will be plenty of time for asking questions and having Ray answer them for you. So let's start out with, how do you find a story? Now, at this point in the storytelling world, there are really two separate factions that we're going for. The one that you may be most familiar with is traditional storytelling. And I recommend, if you're just getting started, go back to the classics and try them all. The themes from those centuries-old stories are just as vivid and relevant today as they were when they were first written. In fact, if you've never read Grimm's fairy tales, you probably don't know how grim they actually are. There's eyes being pecked out left and right, all kinds of cool stuff going on. The same is true of the Hans Christian Andersen fables. They don't always have rosy endings to them. They're stories that require an emotional commitment of the storyteller that is bigger than what you would expect when you've only seen the Disney versions. For real classic tales, you can go back to the Canterbury Tales. There's some pretty ribald stuff in there. If you've never read the Canterbury Tales because it was too big a book or because you don't enjoy the Middle English, Juan that April with her shoulder sota, the virtue engendered is pierced to the rota, and etc. You can find it translated into English from Middle English. And of course, you can go back to the original Italian, the Decameron by Boccaccio. 10 classic stories. And rather than just telling these stories on their own, and you can certainly do that, you can put a twist on them by asking yourself, how would I tell this story in modern America? Someone asked herself that. She took the story Emma by Jane Austen and wrote the movie Clueless, that you may remember, from 1990. Same story, just updated. And that's a wonderful way for you to create new stories based on these old themes. Now, one of the best things about these books that I'm showing you here, they're all completely free. You can get them from Gutenberg.org, and I'm going to give you a list of links at the end of the presentation. There's also a site, worldoftales.com, which has folk tales from every part of the world. So find a story that resonates with you. Perhaps it expresses your culture, or just bring stories that you remember from your childhood to Toastmasters. I can tell you that Toastmasters used to be an organization full of old white guys with beards, but I am the last of a dying breed. We are a much more diverse organization now, and I encourage you to bring your own cultures to Toastmasters by sharing your gift of story. Now that's storytelling in terms of fables and fairy tales. But more recently, there's been a focus on the power of storytelling in business and in life, ways of expressing yourself in a way that you can be more I can't believe that the word I'm looking for is escaping me. Persuasive, I guess will do. in your daily life by reaching people on an emotional level and telling them stories. When you choose a personal story, it's very important that it be something you're willing to share, but you have to share it openly. If you are interested in sharing more personal stories, I strongly urge you to listen to the program called The Moth Radio Hour on public radio. You can also look for the Moth Podcast. You're going to hear stories. Some of them are big, harrowing stories, but most of them are tiny moments of realization where someone just has epiphany and it changes their entire outlook on life. That's the kind of story that I recommend to you. Now, how do you come up with these stories? One thing that I do is keep a notebook in my back pocket at all times. And if a notion for a story comes to me, I make a point of jotting it down immediately. I also have a notebook next to me on the nightstand. Sometimes I'll wake up at 3 in the morning and I just have this notion. I've gotten very good at writing in the dark. I don't turn a light on. I just take the notebook and scratch some, just enough marks on the paper to remind me of what it was I was thinking in the middle of the night. And I'm able to grasp that story in the morning. But you have to write it down when the idea occurs to you. Really, I don't know about you. It's very hard for me to recapture the magic. I remember that I had an idea, but I don't remember the idea in the morning. The engaging humor pathway, it now has a utility on the pathway site where you can record your story ideas as they come to you and capture them and then flesh them out into full-fledged stories. And you have a little notebook right in the Pathways program that you can use. I have the book Storyworthy up here by Matthew Dix. I wish I had learned about this book earlier. I only heard about it this past Saturday, and I've only read the first 3 chapters. Already well worth the money that I spent on this book. He recommends that you do what he calls homework for life. Every night, he uses an Excel spreadsheet and he writes the date and something that happened to him that day that he could turn into a story. He does it every single night. And the nice thing about it is it's easy to write the date and a sentence every day. And he's able to keep that up and maintain it. So this is something I'm going to try myself going forward. But something that simple, it doesn't mean that every single day you're going to have something that's going to be a story that's going to win the international speech contest. But if you did that for 365 days, I guarantee you somewhere in that year, you would find a story that would be story worthy, something that you want to tell in public. Another great book that I came across recently is Stories That Stick. This is by Kendra Hall. This book is more about marketing and sales, but the idea is you can take a story, use it to reach somebody on an emotional level that it enables you to change their minds about things, to convince them that they should purchase products, to convince them that they should go along with you on particular projects. She breaks it down into certain types of stories that you tell in certain types of situations. That works very well. Now, they both have some interesting techniques for discovering stories. And we're going to try one from Matt Dix right now. I'm glad you got your paper and pencil together, because I want you to look at this grid. Now, you may be thinking, oh, I don't have any stories. I don't have anything worth telling. Well, think about your first kiss. I can tell you about my first kiss. That was Ruthie Dehart. She was 8 and I was 9. She had very silky blonde hair cut in a very fetching bob. I remember it was summer and she was wearing white one-piece outfit that had pink and orange stripes going up and down, just pinstripes down. She put her wrists on my shoulders and then her hands behind my head, and she just sort of flicked me forward. I took a step and she planted a real kiss on me. And I've ever since, I wish that I had another kiss exactly like that, or I'd been able to kiss her one more time. She wouldn't do it after that. But that kiss is one that stuck with me for the past 54 years. I remember it like it was yesterday. So that's the first box here. You remember the best car you ever had? Or the first time you got into real trouble? What was the worst gift you ever got, or the worst gift you ever gave? Think of the boxes in these in this chart and what it springs to mind, and you'll instantly have a story that you're able to share. Do any of these resonate with anybody? I'm just interested when you saw this.
Definitely.
Yeah, which one, Abhi?
Car, I remember when I got into trouble. I still remember it was like February 13th. I was coming from Walmart and I was just taking the turn. And I took a wide turn. I brushed that Acura so that its bumper came down. I was so scared because that time I did not have my license. And it was a learner's license, but I didn't know where it was. I was scared because I know I was going to get a ticket today. So I still remember I can write a story completely, what happened exactly, how it happened.
Anyone else have one of these boxes that just kind of instantly sparks something?
Oh yeah, my very first car was a 1971 blue and white Pinto that had been rolled on the freeway, and it was dented and lopsided. And I got it for $100 from my baseball coach. And I told everybody that I threatened to go to the rival school, so he gave me a car.
That's funny. My first car was a Rambler station wagon. I paid $100 for it. But the reason I paid $100 for it is the previous owner had paid $100 for it. And he made me promise that if I sold it, I would sell it for $100. Apparently, this is the way the car had been passed from owner to owner for at least the previous 7 owners. And when I moved back to Northern California after college, I sold the car for $100. It's a great car. That's probably my best car. I've had newer cars, I've had better running cars, but that car was the one I liked the best. Denise, you wanted to share which one resonates with you?
For me, it's pet. We always had pets at home, but my first real pet was the dog that I rescued from the animal shelter, the town animal shelter. And she was an Australian cattle dog, and the best companion, the best friend, the best pet that I could have. And losing her after 15 years, she was 17 when I put her down. And they're medium-sized dogs. So as you know, life expectancy as the dog gets bigger is less. So she lived quite a long time. And she really impacted my life. In fact, everybody remembers her and used to ask me about her. That's how memorable the dog was.
Great. And Maritesh, here's our last one. What's sparked for you here?
Yeah, travel.
Oh,
Hello?
First, last, best. What kind of trouble?
First travel.
He's mentioning about travel, not trouble. He's saying about
Travel.
Yes, tell us a couple of sentences. Tell us your story.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Denson. Hello everyone, I am Maritesh. The first travel for out of state from Karnataka, India. Uh, 10 years back, I traveled out of state first time. Actually, my father is a politician. He used to went in their institution they all friends planned to go for out of station travel. Hence, we Cullen went. Me also, we Cullen went for that tour. We went for Goa, Mumbai for the travel. When they Goa, I really enjoyed very well. And my father friends, they are all our politicians. They used to in Goa, the wine is very cheap. Wine and drinks are very cheap. Hence, they thought every people bought one case of wine and they kept in the uh, Volvo bus. Hence, after the checkpost, police were catched and they told there is no license to take and go wine from one district to another district. They told. Then all people are drank in checkpost and left the wine bottle there only, and we came back. That was very funny time for me. The first tour, out of station tour. Thank you.
Any story involving cheap wine is definitely fodder for a personal story. Gaharsini, I see you have your hand up, and we're going to go ahead and let you finish us off here.
Sure, absolutely. I had two. One was about trouble, and the other that I won't go there yet. But the trouble one was I was going to another province that was 14 hours away, and I was, I guess, 17 or 18, and I was by my own. And when I went to that other province, it was very scary because I had to cross some points where there were a lot of people like gangsters and all those different people, and I'm like this motivation, like women can do anything and let's like rock it. And I had all these men with me in that car, and I was like, well, I have that passion and that motivation that I can accomplish all these things. And when I saw those gangsters and all those people, I was like, oh my God, what did I put myself into? So kind of a trouble. Yeah.
Fantastic. So you see, if you think, geez, I don't have any stories and none of these sparked for you, that's fine. Keep adding items on the left, and you can cherry pick. You can choose things that you know are going to spark stories for you. And you'll be able to come up with something pretty much for anything in the chart, because your worst car may have been a really nice car, actually. Your best car might not have been all that spectacular, but it's something personal to you. And we all have a best, a worst, a first, and a last. So that will work. Now, once you have the idea for a story, then it's time to craft it. If you're trying to craft a fairy tale or a folk tale, all you need is any character. The character has a goal, something he or she wants to do, but there are things that get in the way. Anytime you have a story, there have got to be obstacles to overcome. And what you do is you have the character try to overcome the obstacle. And when you overcome the first obstacle, you throw a second obstacle in their way. When you overcome that, you throw another obstacle. And what happens when they've finished all of the obstacles? That's the end of the story. So you don't want it to be too easy for your main character to get through. For example, if Frodo hopped on the back of an eagle, flew to Mordor, tossed the ring in the lava, and flew all the way back on the eagle, that would have been a very quick story, but not a very entertaining one. So you have to have all of the struggles that go with it in order for the story to resonate with anybody and to have a plot. As soon as you have overcome all the obstacles, though, you want to end the story as quickly as possible and give it a sweet conclusion. Once all the obstacles are done, even though we would like to learn more about the life that Cinderella had after she married the prince, if she lived happily ever after, there's not going to be a very interesting story to tell about that. Another approach, particularly with personal stories, is normal, explosion, new normal. And this is from the Stories That Stick book. So the first thing you do is describe in some detail what your normal world was. Then you have some moment, and it can be a huge thing, could be a car accident, it could be winning the lottery, or it could be looking at your spouse across the dinner table and seeing a particular smile. And then after that, everything changes. And when it changes, you describe the new normal. So following one of these very simple formulas, you can come up with a story that is going to resonate with yourself and resonate with others. It's really not difficult to do. Well, Ray, that's what you do when you come up with a straightforward story, but what would you do with one of these normal stories that I keep throwing around here?
That's what you're talking. You're talking, asking me. I think that some of the key things to make a story and to kind of get it memorable, and for my expertise, I did stand-up comedy for 15 years, and I want stories to have laughter in it. And the reason you want to have laughter in it, people remember it more. Stories are everywhere, and the most important thing about creating humorous stories, one of the easiest ways to create it is something I call the flip, right? So humor in general runs from good to bad and bad to worse. So when something bad happens to you, that is a tremendous opportunity for you to create a humorous story out of it. And one of the easiest things to change your attitude about life and write a great story is to take anything that's bad that happened to you and flip it. What do I mean by that? Has anyone ever walked out of the door in the morning to have the spider web greet you? And so it like gets all over your face and your thing, and you're like, oh, get away from here, right? That happened to anybody? All right. Well, that happened to my sister like 5 days in a row when I was a kid. And I remember that day to this day because what a great story that is, not from my sister's perspective, but from the spider. Every night he went back to work trying to build a bigger and better web, trying to catch my sister. And he's thinking, you know what, if I just catch that woman, it's going to feed my family for years. So what a great way to write a speech about perseverance. Everybody's walked through a spider web. Everybody has the opportunity to write that. A friend of mine, here's another example of flipping the story. A friend of mine had a flat tire the other day and called me up and complained about having a flat tire. And my immediate reply was, well, how do you think the tire felt? The tire was on the car having a great day. And then so, no, don't go over the nail. Don't go over the nail. Don't go over the nail. You went over the nail. Then he pulled over. You know what he did? He got out of the car and he kicked me. He kicked me. He kicked me again. Then he went in the trunk and got this metal thing and started twisting on my innards to take me off from home. It was the most awful day of my life. So you had a pretty good day compared to the tire. It's all a perspective. It's all about the things that could happen, the things that you see as annoying to you are the greatest pieces of humor that you can possibly have. That's a key thing on flipping the story is really what I'm talking about. Questions about that? Anybody? Nobody. It's easy. Yeah, Abhijit.
Ray, so what you're saying is I have to create that tension in the story. Is that correct? It's like when I create the tension, then I have the audience's attention.
Well, there's tension in every story if you create it.
Okay.
But not every story has to have tension in it. Every Toastmaster story in the international speech contest, they want you to have something there in the growth and the motivation. Stories can, I believe that every story should have a point, but I can tell you stories that don't, that are just fun to listen to. There's also, your stories build out of vignettes. And we talked about Hawaii earlier today. Well, one of the things that I learned, and I haven't put this in the story yet, if I'm in Maui, every cab I take, every cab driver in Maui knows Bruno Mars. Every one of them brings it up and they say what a nice guy he is. Well, I don't know if that's true, but that's true to me. I don't know how that fits in the story, but I make a mental note of that and I do that. It goes in the Rolodex. There are certain pieces of what you do as a storyteller. There's a technique that I use. I call it from inside to inside, where I go inside your brain and I transfer it inside my story, right? And an example of this, I was in a bar. I met a guy. It's not one of those stories, okay? But we talked and we enjoyed each other's company and we recognized each other, but we didn't know where from. And I asked him what he did. And he said, well, I'm a district attorney. And I said, aha, okay. I didn't know it wasn't. I was prosecuted and went to jail, but I was a member of a jury. And the member of the jury, we did not convict this guy of the highest charges. We convict him of the lowest charges. And he asked, why did that happen? Because this was a bad guy. We didn't really like this guy. And I said, the only thing that you proved to us was that this was a bad guy. You didn't show any proof about what he had done. Because frankly, you were annoying. He was the most annoying lawyer I've ever seen in my life. And I talked to him for a while and he said, what do you do? And I said, well, I coach people on how not to be annoying and how to have interaction so people want to listen to you. And he invited me to speak to a group of lawyers at a lunch and learn. And I realized that if you speak to a bunch of lawyers, lawyers understand that they can speak. They think they can speak better than anybody in the world. So I had maybe 15 seconds to impress these people right off the bat, and I had to figure out how to do it. And I wanted to teach them this process of inside to inside your brain, transferred inside my story. And I thought I did this. I walked up in front of the group and I stood there long enough, about 10 seconds, where it started to be uncomfortable. 10 seconds is a long time to be silent. And I was silent. And then I just smiled and I leaned in and I said, have you ever been seduced? And I shut up. And just like some of you, I saw smiles, I saw laughter. It spread throughout the room. And what I said was, now, I wasn't there when you were. But from your reaction, I can tell that most of you have been, and you kind of enjoyed it, and you're thinking about it right now. And I'm getting subconscious credit for bringing you back to the first time you were seduced. Wouldn't it be great to put a jury in the palm of your hand as quickly as I put you in the palm of mine? And when I said that, the whole room went, ooh, ooh. But you have to take a chance. You have to use the things in your life that you know. That would be on Dennis's list as firsts, right? And all those things work, but you are creating this this opportunity for the audience to join you. One of my speeches starts with, imagine a little 5-year-old boy just living his dream. Now, when I say that, you all think of a 5-year-old boy. It's not the same 5-year-old boy. They look differently and their dreams are different. But what I just did is I took you from wondering what the speech was about and putting you into my story, thinking about a little boy living his dream, and now we're all on the same page and we can move on from there. That's part of the sizzle part. That's part of grabbing the attention of the audience. You have that opportunity. The faster you do it, the better your story, the better chance you have with your story. So that's kind of like the flip and the beginning with a bang. My friend Don Franceschi has a book called From Awful to Awesome about presentations. And he says the key to presentations is to bang the beginning. So those are a couple of good tips for you. A couple little stories I told in there to kind of demonstrate those things. Deanna, you got a question?
I think for Diana, we have her. I have her like talk to us through the chat.
Okay.
So it's within the chat, yeah. And
What does it say?
yeah, I think Diana wants to say that
That club story tell.
yeah, that storytelling is like part of the club. But I think if Diana wants to talk to us more, then she'll further explain it. But Ray, you could probably go ahead and yeah.
Okay. What did Sugan? Is that how I pronounce it? You have something that's in the chat, I think, too. You want to explain it to us? Or no? I don't have the chat up where I'm.
I can read it to you if you
Yeah, that'd be
like.
great. That'd be great.
Okay. Yeah. No, I can speak up. See, it's about 20 years back. I'm in finance. I'm an auditor, so I used to travel for my work. I used to go for Florida about 4 months. On this one particular trip, I was coming back from Fort Lauderdale, from Florida, coming back to Hartford, Connecticut, and Connecticut is my home. Been there for about 28 years, and that particular evening was Friday evening. I was coming back home, and the weather was quite bad. And I always had a window seat, so normal seat. I go sit down, and there was a couple, and the lady was in the middle, and the gentleman was in the aisle seat. Right from the start, started with wind and rain, lightning, you name it. We had it. Somehow probably should have started the plane, but they did. So from the time we started for the next 3 hours, especially the lady was so nervous. With her left hand, she was holding her husband. With the right hand, she was holding my left hand because she was so nervous, crying, and so it was quite scary flight. I've traveled quite a bit for my work and vacation, whatever. I've been to 43 states in US. I do travel quite a bit. That was the most scariest flight I've been to. And after another flight, after everybody was coming down, and the flight and the captain goes, "I hope you had a fun trip, or hope you had a good trip," something like that. The pilot was saying. So can you imagine 150 people? Everybody was thinking. A lot of people are thinking maybe this is a flight. You may go down. It was quite scary, but we made it. But now that he's reflecting back, it's something I'll never forget. That's something that we were quite scared. There's no doubt about it. Any person who took that flight, there's no way they could not have been scared. Definitely, this was a scary flight for me personally, myself. But
So
God was great. Yeah, good.
How would you take that and turn that into a story that people want to listen to and make it a little bit more fun? How do you create humor in a story like that? Well, what's the flip side? You landed, right? So yeah, it's the takeoff and landings that bother me, but this is the first time the middle bothered me, right? But I would explore through dialogue with you and that couple sitting next to you. I would have somebody say like, well, it looks like God's trying to send you a message. This relationship probably isn't the right thing to do, you know? So you would have these things that could have happened, could have said, I would get on the microphone with yes, this is the captain speaking. This is God, and you guys are sunk, but I'll tell you what, drinks are free for the rest of the trip. Something like that. You just kind of flip it and you throw these other things out there. Most of the funny stuff that's going to happen in a speech comes from dialogue. Tragedy and comedy are right next to each other. So there's a fine line between getting laughter and getting people upset at you. And with that piece, so for example, the thing about humor, it's instant trust, instant rapport, instant likability, right? And you can see it on people and how it works with people, where we've all met strangers, right? Sometimes it's magical, right? Sometimes it's creepy. Well, put in the chat what you think the difference between magical and creepy is when you meet a stranger. put like one word in there. What do you think?
You're talking to me?
Anybody, everybody. What creeps you out when you meet a stranger? What is it?
The way they are looking at me.
Yuki says the eyes, the proximity, magical, you feel enlightened, weirdos, bad vibes. Okay, bad vibes is the number one answer. But how do you define bad vibes? The number one answer I get when I ask that question is the tone. The tone is what sets people off. So if I came up to you out of nowhere and I went, "Hi, what's your name?" That's magical, right? No? So I should change. If I change my tone, it's okay. If I said, "Hi, what's your name?" That's even creepier, isn't it? So it's not the tone. And when I did that, "Hi," what I could see in the Zoom room is some of you went like this. Some of you pop back like that. Well, why do you do that? Why do you drop your chin when somebody creeps you out? Well, that's the most vulnerable area of your body. And when you're creeped out, you protect it. What happens when you laugh? You throw your head back. That's how laughter is instant trust. That's why you need to control it and understand it. It is the most memorable thing about speaking. It's the most memorable thing about creating a story, and it will get you invited back anywhere you want to speak if you want to do that. You don't have to be funny to be a paid speaker, but if you want to get asked back anywhere, you have to be funny when you do it. So there's a couple of things. I don't want to take up too much time because we got other people to speak and say things. So you can, if you want 52 humor tips, I have a website with kiwilive.com. Password is Zoom. I'll put it in the chat. kiwilive.com. Password is Zoom. I have 52 humor tips sitting on there that you can go grab and talk to me if you want.
Well, Ray, you were just saying that dialogue is very important for humor.
It's
building
funny
humor.
how I said that, isn't it, Dennis?
It is. It's funny that you brought that up because someone who knows a lot about dialogue happens to be Yuki.
Thank you, Dennis. So my portion of my presentation is dialogue. My favorite world champion public speaking, Craig Valentine, said, "Dialogue is the heart of any story. Dialogue pumps life into your story. Dialogue brings your audience into the moment, present moment, and let them watch the story unfold. And dialogue is a goldmine for humor. Today, I'm going to give a short speech, and I want you to pay attention to dialogue that I use. Could be different types of dialogue, character to character in a dialogue. And after I'm done with my short speech, we'll talk about some secrets that you can take away so that your next speech will be more interesting, engaging, and funnier. My fellow Toastmasters and guests, get ready. Dennis, could you stop the slide, please, for a moment? Thank you. Yuki Ascue, QuickBooks. QuickBooks, Yuki Ascue. Look at me. What do you think I do? What's my job? Go ahead and put in the chat box what you think I do. You look like teacher, accountant, engineer, lawyer, executive. Nah, I'm a psychotherapist. I play with people's brains. Can I play with yours? I'll give it back. Let me ask you, have you ever misjudged somebody from how they looked? This is what happened to me. Picture a cold morning, so cold you could feel your toes curl. every breath smoke passed through your lips. I had an appointment at Bob's photo studio to have my pictures taken. Our appointment was 9 a.m. To me, 5 minutes early is too late. So I was there by 8:45. Bob wasn't. His staff said, ushered me into the conference room and said, Bob will be here any minute. Thank you. Tick, tick, tick. You could hear the ticking of the clock while I waited and waited for Bob. At 9:25, Bob rushed in through 3 folders on the mahogany table and said, so sorry, it's one of these mornings. No worries, Bob. It's my day off. Dude, you should have left home early. What a moron. Bob asked me, do you use QuickBooks? Huh? You don't know QuickBooks? What software do you use? Software? I use only Tupperware, silverware, and nightware. I said, I don't use software. Bob looked at me as if to say, you are a moron. If you don't use QuickBooks, there's no reason to continue this conversation. What's going on here? I bolted out of the studio, thinking, what sensible photographer would ask customers what software they use? Back home, Greg, Bob wants me to use some software called QuickBooks, and if I don't, he can take my pictures. What? There's no requirement to know QuickBooks to have your picture taken. What the hell does QuickBooks have to do with it? Greg is smart. That's why I married him. But even he was baffled. Let me call Bob. And he disappeared in this office. Bob, Greg, Yuki, QuickBooks. Yuki! Bob was hiring a bookkeeper. His first applicant was supposed to be there at 8:30. Didn't show up. His staff thought you were the bookkeeper. QuickBooks was for the job interview. My fellow Toastmasters and guests, experience is the greatest teacher. I learned from my experience. Never assume you're meeting the right person. And next time when you're in a photo studio, be ready to say, I use QuickBooks. So that was my speech, and let's talk about dialogue. Dennis, could you put back the thank you? Well, dialogue creates better picture, doesn't it? Most speakers use a lot of narration, but not enough dialogue. Narration is a report. For example, I gave Jackie a birthday card. She opened the envelope, read the card, held it to her heart, and asked me if she could live with me. I just reported. Dialogue goes like this. Happy birthday, Jackie. Thank you, Yuki. Can I live with you? So you could see what happened between Jack and me clearly, right? If there's only dialogue and no narration, that's not a speech. You need a little bit of narration to keep the dialogue going. Like he said, she looked at me and said, There are 4 types of dialogue. Number 1, could you put the next slide, please? Oh, one up above. Oh, character, yeah, character, sorry about that. Character to character dialogue. In my QuickBooks speech, Bob and I had lots of dialogue. Bob asked, do you use QuickBooks? Huh? You don't know QuickBooks? What software do you use? So that's character to character dialogue. Next slide, please. Inner dialogue. It's what you're saying to yourself. I had a couple of inner dialogue in my QuickBooks speech. I said, dude, you should have left home early. What a moron. Also later, when Bob said software, my inner dialogue was, software? I use only Tupperware, silverware, and nightware. So that's inner dialogue, what you're saying to yourself silently. The next slide, please. The third type of dialogue, projected dialogue. It's what the other person is thinking or saying to themselves. You project, gauge, or guess what the other character is saying. For example, Bob looked at me as if to say, you are a moron. I had another speech about my failed job interview, and I described this interviewer like this. Maretta dropped her pen and looked at me like she was saying, do you have brains? So third type is projected dialogue, what the other person might be thinking. Next slide, please. The fourth type is giving the audience dialogue. It's something the audience is thinking. I didn't say this in my QuickBooks speech, but I could have said to you, you are looking at me like you're saying, you don't know QuickBooks? So your line can start like, you're looking at me as if to say, you probably are thinking. So that's giving the audience dialogue. Next slide, please. There are 3 do's when using dialogue. Number 1, facial expression. Your facial expressions are more important than your hand and arm movements combined. It's true, your eyes are the windows to the soul, and your facial expressions before or after the line makes the line work. For example, from my QuickBooks speech, when Bob asked if I use QuickBooks, I was surprised. I said, huh? You could tell I was surprised. Facial expression. Number 2, short and simple. Make it short and simple. It means don't use a long line. Be brief. Craig Valentine said, squeeze in, squeeze out. That means that if you put in a lot of information, you will turn your audience away. Conversation is very brief. And just be brief. Like, instead of saying, I don't know what you're talking about, I just said, huh? To Bob when he said software. What software do you use? Number 3, show, not tell. When you can show, don't tell. Like when Bob found out that I don't use software, he rolled his eyes. But instead of saying he rolled his eyes, I just roll my eyes and show that Bob rolled his eyes. So 3 do's, facial expression, be short and simple, and show, not tell. Next, thank you. To make it clear who is talking in dialogue, there are 3 keys.
Yuki, I have a question. Can I interrupt right now, or could we leave it to the end?
You can ask me.
Okay, great. So in terms of the dialogue, I'm just curious to see if they're really interconnected with each other in a way that projected dialogue then leads to inner dialogue, leads to projected dialogue, and then finally we present it to the audience. Is it that this is somehow a process where we are internalizing it in our brain and then presenting it, or are they separate and autonomous and could be done in different contexts separately without having to go through all of them together?
I think depending on the situation, certainly there could be discrete, but if you are thinking, oh my goodness, Bob is thinking I'm crazy or something, then you may think, oh, he might be looking at me like you were saying. I may have that inner dialogue in myself. And then maybe as a speaker, I may say, oh, you might be looking at me thinking, I do, like Bob, I am crazy or somebody who is behind in technology. Yeah, did I answer your question?
Yes, I think you did. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sure. So to make clear who is talking in dialogue, 3 keys. Number 1, use the character's name. When I was talking to Greg, my line started with, Greg, Bob wants me to use a software called QuickBooks. And if I don't, he can take my pictures. And when Bob apologized that he was late, I said, no worries, Bob. So it was clear who is talking. The number 2, positioning. In Zoom, this means that when the character is talking, you don't look at the camera. You talk to the character spot. Like put the name of the character and place it in a different spot on your screen. Like when Bob is talking, I was looking at Bob's spot all the time. And when Greg was talking, I was looking on this corner here. And when I'm talking, I'm on the left side, upper left corner. So you always look at the same spot for one character. So that's clear who is talking. And number 3, voice. You don't have to change your voice drastically unless you're exaggerating in humorous speech. It could be a very subtle change, but you want to use your character's voice as much as possible. In my Star is Born speech, my 9-year-old heroine asked me, Yuki, what makes people happy? Jen, your thoughts. Thoughts make you happy or sad? It's a very subtle change, I think, but the child was talking and I was talking to her. So positioning and voice at the same time. And that's what I wanted to say to review 4 types of dialogue: character to character, inner dialogue, projected dialogue, and giving the audience dialogue. 3 do's: facial expressions between lines, keep it simple, and show, don't tell. Who's talking? Use a name, position, and voice. And use dialogue to make your next speech more memorable. Who is
That's
talking
great,
next?
Yuki.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much. Now, what I want to do is expand a little bit about how you can use your voice in these subtle ways. The thing is, in Toastmasters, and people are going to have different opinions about this, but I'm right. Most Toastmasters who use vocal variety overuse their vocal variety. I was asked by someone a couple of years ago to watch a video and give him some tips about how he could improve in his humorous speech contest. His style was very Toastmastery. I told him I had no feedback to give him. Just keep doing what you're doing because it has a good chance of winning in Toastmasters. What I didn't say is that it would never get chosen to be on public radio or in a storytelling festival. It wasn't honest. It was representational rather than presentational. He was clearly pretending to have feelings rather than showing actual emotion. So frankly, it was just like this year's ISC winner, if you've seen her. But this is the only organization in which that style of speaking will actually work. Subtlety not only works, but it works better than overwrought dialogue. So my recommendation is tone it down. Be real. Even when you're telling a tale, tell it with conviction, and the audience will come along with you. So what can you do with your voice to add interest? Well, you can vary the pitch, and we saw Yuki do that. When she's being a child, she raises her pitch just a little bit. When she's being older, she drops the pitch a little lower. That's all you need to do. You don't have to go like this, and you don't have to go like that in order to differentiate between two characters of different ages. Pace is something that you can use to convey character as well. If I were the tortoise and the hare, I'm going to talk rather carefully and slowly as I explain how I'm going to win the race. Win the race? Are you crazy? I'm going to be there 10 minutes before you even get started. That's right. I'm going to take a nap right now. And I'm going to, oh my God, it's the tortoise. He's crossing the finish line. So little change in pace, little change in volume, very easy to convey the different questions. And you'll notice that I changed my volume. That I got louder as I got more excited. Now, some characters will always talk loudly, like Ray. Ray is always going to talk loudly, no matter what he's doing, no matter where he is. And that's okay. So if I want to be Ray, I'm going to open up and let the pipes flow. But if I'm going to be Yuki, Yuki is someone who, as they say, would not say shit if she had a mouthful. And so I have to speak a little more calmly, a little quieter, if I'm going to portray her as a character in my story. Another thing that's really important in storytelling, especially when you're telling folk tales, is to vary the melody. Now, in English, we use 3 tones. 3 tones in American English, I should say. That's right. If I'm asking a question, I say, how are you doing today? I'm sorry. Would you like some, goodness sakes, would you like some oatmeal? There we go. Going up. No, no oatmeal. Thank you. Yeah. Is it raining? No, it's not raining. 3 tones. Everything on the midline, go up for a question, go down for an answer. And that's the way most Americans spend their days talking. But the truth is there are all these different notes of the scale. So if you're reciting poetry, but soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east. And Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun. You see, you can add a little bit of music to what you're saying. Now, in some cultures, that music comes very naturally. And that's why I'm specifying American English. So if you don't want to talk like your typical American, be sure to change the melody and change it for different characters. If I am doing a character who happens to be working at a desk at the Department of Motor Vehicles, next, first name, Dennis, last name, Dawson, occupation, spell it, please. So if you maintain the monotone, then I'm conveying character just as well as I would with melody. Timbre is where you let your voice resonate. We don't think about this very often, but if you're doing a weaselly little character, you're going to be talking a little higher, but you're also going to be putting his voice up here in the nose and the forehead and talk in a way that has a different sort of resonance than you would with a respected member of the clergy who is giving his opinion. You're going to put the voice down in your chest. And you can practice this. Put your hand on your forehead and speak and try to focus your energy up there. Try to make it vibrate when you're talking through your head, as opposed to your chest voice. Put your hand on your sternum and purposely try to speak so that you're going to have the vibrations come out through your chest. You can use your timbre then to change the character. And of course, there's always accents. If you can do an accent and you can pull it off, well, put it into your story. And it doesn't matter if the character happens to be Irish, you just make it an Irish character. That's fine. If it's a wombat, you can have an Irish wombat. That works out very well. If it's going to be the Eastern European, you can throw Eastern European in, no problem. There are some accents that I have trouble with. One of them is Scottish. I've worked on it several times. If I'm going to use a Scottish accent, I go out on the internet and just search for how to do a Scottish accent. And you'll find YouTube videos where they'll tell you all of the best tips and tricks for which consonants to emphasize, which ones you skip, how to change the tone of your different vowel sounds. And you can learn how to do an appropriate accent rather quickly. The one thing you don't want to do is slip into stereotypes and caricature where it's, oh, good morning, I'm Jose Jimenez, or anything like that. If you do it that elaborately, it's going to obviously be offensive to people. So, hello, my name is Jose. That's fine. And no one's going to get upset by that. Subtlety, subtlety, my friends. It's always good and something that we need to learn more of in Toastmasters. So those are my 6 ways that you can vary your voice in order to convey character with the pitch, the pace, volume, melody, timbre, or the accent. Harsane, you asked lots of good questions. May I hear your next?
Well, thank you. Yeah, so in terms of accent, I am not a native speaker, so I do have an accent, but I had a voice teacher who would help me to adjust my voice sometimes. And with the accent, I was trying to be more American and use American accent, and I think that messed up with how I was speaking. So I'm kind of wondering how you could own your own accent in a way that you could embody it and say however you want to say without mimicking someone else as your own speech. And I think that's like somehow where I'm like sometimes not wanting to sound the way I do, but like wanting to, I guess, look cooler and change my accent. So I kind of wanted to have your thoughts on that. And yeah, probably. And also maybe I think I'm trying to like get connections as well between pitch and pace and volume, and to what extent like all could go together when we are presenting a speech. Could they like complement one another in how maybe we could practice them in a way that then they could come natural to us? I don't know if that really gives you some perspective.
If you want to get used to varying your pitch, pace, volume, melody, etc., do it very consciously. Really try it. Now I'm going to speak very softly, and I'm going to slow my pace down, and I'm going to do it on purpose. And as I slow down, I'm going to go up the scale, and I'm going to go down. And I'm going to play with the idea that I can make my voice sound very flexible. And then I'm going to be dull and loud, and just practice these things. Think about the character and go through this list. Would they have a high or a low pitch? Would their pace be fast or slow? Would they speak loudly or softly? What kind of melody would they use? Or would they speak in a monotone? Are they going to speak out of their head or out of their chest? And do they speak with a foreign accent? And by picking through all of these and assigning them to the character, and then practicing it in a very deliberate way, you can assign these voices, and with a little bit of practice, get comfortable switching back between them as you're telling the story. Now, you said something about wanting to sound more like an American or sound cooler. There are only
Don't do
people
that.
in Yeah. The only people in the world who think Americans are cool are Americans. And
Americans are super cool despite me being Canadian. I think Americans are the coolest. Okay.
yeah. Well, you're watching too much television. That's all.
We're
all I can
rude,
say.
we're arrogant, and we think that we can pronounce your language better than you can.
That's right.
Unagi, Osaka, Toyota.
I agree with you, Dennis.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. Americans believe that if they shout English louder in a foreign country, that other people will be able to understand them. So no, but if you, the one thing you want to be concerned with when you have an accent is whether or not you can be understood, and yeah, that is something that is worth working on. If you're having trouble, I always pick on Abhi. Can I pick on you again, Abhi? Okay, so he had a fantastic speech. One of the words in the speech was cardiologist. And the way he was saying it, Americans just couldn't catch it. Okay? Once I understood what the word was, I was able to follow him just fine. But in that particular case, I suggested he change it to heart doctor. And by changing it to heart doctor, suddenly everybody could understand. He could say it easily. So if you're having trouble being understood, that's something worth working on. But the idea that you want to somehow diminish or get rid of accent, that's ridiculous. Your accent is absolutely beautiful, absolutely charming. And I love to listen to you as you speak. So being understood is different than having an accent. And that's all I'll say about that.
Two other things about this.
Okay.
All these different vivid voice variations that he's got there. Your biggest enemy is sameness. And people will be like, oh, you should be high energy. Well, if you're always high energy, it's great, fantastic. That's exhausting, right? If you're flat, that's exhausting. So you need to put the pedal down on the metal, draw it back, pet it down. All these different things are pieces that you can use. Don't use all of them. Don't use them all the time, but just vary yourself. So sometimes you are soft, sometimes you're loud, sometimes you're fast paced, quick paced, whatever. But if your biggest enemy is sameness, and that ruins more speeches in my eyes than really a lot of other things.
Yeah, definitely. That does resonate with me. I'm like sometimes super high, fire, all that, and then I lose some people out there. But yeah, I think we have Denise too. Do we have?
Can you elaborate on timbre?
No, not very much. It really has to do with where the voice is resonating within your body. And it simply has an impact on the way the character sounds. Again, by putting the voice high in the head, you're going to sound more weaselly. By putting your voice deep in your chest, you're going to sound more profound. It's a combination of the sound that you project and also the feeling that you have internally as you feel the vibration in those two places. So it's just something to be aware of and something to play with. It's very important when you're singing in a choir to understand your timbre and be sure that you're singing in an appropriate place for the particular piece of music that you're singing. And that's where it's applied more strategically in here. It's just one of the 6 things that you can vary as you're speaking in order to achieve a particular effect. Ray, you wanted to add something.
Just a quick example of, I used a change in timbre when I said, hi, because that's up high in there. And then, hey, what's your name? That's down low. So you've got these tools and everywhere in between. I think one of the best things to do to kind of realize how to change voice pace, if you find somebody, and my best example is every imitation of a president since like 1976 is an imitation of Dana Carvey imitating a president. And what he does, he doesn't necessarily sound like them, but he gets these 6 things, he nails it. And I watched Dana Carvey explain how American actor Jimmy Stewart talks. And it's just, there's 3 ways to imitate Jimmy Stewart. One is down low, down here. Say, sometimes you waver a little bit, and here, other way up here. So he uses all these different things, and you don't have to invent the wheel. You can take somebody that's already good at it and see what are they doing and how can I use that. So these are pieces of the puzzle. They don't make the entire puzzle, but they are great pieces to have at your disposal.
Thank you. Very helpful.
So this is all great for sound, but what about the visual aspect of storytelling, Ray? How do you project those images into people's heads?
Your face is amazing with that. And we talked about that, but there's really, if you think about creating images, one of the most important things we have as a speaker is to paint a picture in our audience's head. And actually you can unshare it with this, so they can look at this thing a little later. So let me just kind of take this over so I can have a big old face in the book here. One of my favorite foods is steak. And I like steak. It's an experience to me. And when somebody takes a steak and throws it on the grill, you hear a sound. It's tss. Now, if you're a vegetarian, think about a big piece of eggplant, throw that on the grill. Same sound. Tss. Well, those 5 letters, TSSSS, tss, that is how you create sizzle in your speech. The devil's in the details, and what those 5 things stand for: taste, sights, sounds, smells, and sensations. So, for example, one of the memories from my childhood, I played a lot of baseball, and I love playing baseball. But when I smell the scent of freshly cut grass, I think of baseball automatically. I was doing a Zoom call the other day, and this sound came from outside, and it literally made the hair on the back of my neck, which there's still some there, I literally made that stand up. And I didn't know why, because this sound just scared me. And then I realized half an hour later, when the tow truck showed up, what that sound was. It was the sound of a car starting without a catalytic converter, because it had been stolen. And that's happened to me twice during COVID. I've had my catalytic converter stolen twice, but that sound sent shivers down my spine. And when you create these sights, sounds, smells, sensations, these tastes, these are things that make your audience right there with you. Instead of saying, well, I went to like a 5th grade play, you could say, 217 proud parents and their hyperkinetic kids lean forward in squeaky folding chairs, staring at a confused little boy standing in the middle of the stage. You could smell Mrs. Minagawa's 15-cent brownies as they lined up right behind the lemonade on Mrs. Peterson's lemonade stand. Bigger picture, I can see the stuff that's there. I went to college, I went to a bar, and I got dressed up. Well, for the 3rd consecutive year at UC Santa Barbara, I was a senior. New year, new bar, the safari, birds, waterfalls, an ice ramp that led from the top level down to the bottom that led distilled, chilled alcohol right into your mouth. It took a thick wallet to stay and a jacket to get in. So I threw on my thrift store $5 suit, my 8th grade skinny graduation tie, my cheap shoes, and I got in my ride, a 1972 blue and white Pinto that had been rolled on the side. As I pulled up, the valet laughed at me. That's a little different than I went to college and went to a bar and dressed up. It creates interest, it creates fun. This face, when you tell a speech, what Dennis was kind of talking about is Toastmasters is Madam Toastmasters, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. Welcome to my speech in the International Speech Competition. Well, what's going to be most effective? Have you ever gone to coffee or to happy hour with your friends and held court telling a story and had them having fun? That's how you do it, especially on Zoom. You have to become charismatic through the little green dot. And these descriptors, taste, sights, sounds, smells, sensations, these descriptors help you do that. Actions, words, expressions, and emotions involved with taste, sight, sounds, smells, and sensations give you all the little tricks you need to make people go, really? Tell me more. Because that's all you're trying to do. Really? Tell me more. Your opening line is for the next line. The next line is for the next line. Keep people excited. I think we're getting too far in what I need to say. So I'll send it back to Dennis or Garsonet or whoever needs to.
Ray, the one slide remaining says that funny is the honey that makes your story stick. Would you say that humor has any bearing on your ability to tell a good story?
Humor is the best way to get people to want to hear you, one. Number two, when you take a story and put humor into the story, what you're doing, the height of humor creates the height of learning. So if you're creating a humorous speech or you're creating a speech that you want something to be memorable, you put the most memorable thing right after your biggest laugh. Because here's what humor does in a speech. When I grew up, there was a toy called an Etch-a-Sketch, and I hope most of you know what that was. So it's this thing you could draw this thing on, and you pick it up and you shake it over your head, and what it does, it wipes the whole slate clean so you can start a new one. What humor is, it's that version to your brain. If you're worried about confusion, anger, fear, life sucks, all these things, if I make you laugh, all those things go away. You have a clean slate in your brain, and now I can put my thoughts in your head, and we can start our own cult and go from there. Because humor is the greatest tool to get people to listen to you, to get people to understand what you're saying. If you want to get ahead in business, the people that are funny have the best chances to win, because 84% of the people at work think that the funniest person is doing the better job, whether that's true or not. CEOs want two things when they hire somebody: a good work ethic and a sense of humor. If you want to learn how to get ahead through humor in the workplace, get a book called Humor Seriously. It's written by Jennifer Akers and Naomi Bogdanis. They're two Stanford professors that teach an MBA graduate class at Stanford about business humor. Or call me and we'll talk about it. There we go. How's that, Dennis?
You are brilliant as always, Ray. Thank you so much for coming along. We have a few minutes left for any additional questions you might have.
Yes, please unmute yourself. Use this space. Great. We have Niharika. Jump in.
Can you put the humor book name in the chat? And I wanted to know, like, if someone who thinks they're not good at humor want to start off, like, how do you just, when you're just an amateur in this, how do you begin with humor?
A couple things. Number one, so you got to look at humor. Don't worry about being a stand-up comedian. If you laugh, you have a great sense of humor. So if you look at it, like, a lot of people exercise, right? But the first thing to do to exercise is move. What you have to do is take movement and define it and make it focused. Then it becomes exercise. Well, even if you exercise a lot, that still doesn't make you a professional athlete. And on humor, we've got a sense of humor, right? So there's this sense of humor at the bottom. If you focus it, then you've got the ability to make people laugh. That still doesn't make you a stand-up comic. One of the things that I have a program called the Humor Algorithm, that it's a 6-week program. I do an hour every week with you and actually teach you how to write humor and how to see the humor in life. And through that, I always give it to Toastmasters at half price, but it's something that I invented during COVID, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's fun. A couple people here have been through it, but you have to start looking for what's funny. And the fastest way to do that is to really look at what I call two-way options. So the words you use in life, the biggest problem that people have to be funny is they look at the logic of the idea versus the logic of the words. What do I mean by that? Have you seen the Geico commercials where they have, we have an ant problem? And then they pan back and we just bought a house, we have an ant problem. They pan back and there's all these middle-aged ladies going, oh, Timmy, this is expired in your refrigerator. Oh my God, I hope they have enough money to clean this place. So when you think about the ant problem in a house, you think A-N-T, and the commercial shows you to think A-U-N-T. So it's a different ant they're talking about. They're pronounced the same way. And that's where most humor comes from that you see on a daily basis. So the first thing is to figure out exactly what is funny. You have to define it, build the structure of it, and then you can do it yourself. And the problem is that talking about creating humor is probably the least funny thing on the planet, but it's not a miracle. It's not a unicorn. It is a step-by-step flow that you can take. It's like code. Right? You know how to write code, then you can figure out how to be funny because it's just one thing follows the next. I don't know if that helped or anything, but I just talked really quickly. Was that?
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Ray, building off of that, I think I'm thinking about like the algorithms in I don't know if anyone else has something to talk about, please jump into. But how does humor translate into algorithms in coding? How could you define a process for humor? And then how could you put yourself in that process, internalizing it for yourself? So like to put things into your brain without thinking about different contexts or different cultural dynamics that are out there.
So it's really, I mean, it's not a numerical thing. It's a process. It's a step-by-step process to create humor. There's 52 humor tips at kiwilive.com, password Zoom. You can go there and pick that up. That's it's free. It's everything. The thing about you have to understand what humor is. And most people can't even define it. And it's different in business than it is interpersonally. So the best definition I ever found of humor comes from the Humor Research Lab in Boulder, Colorado. It's or HURL is what they call it. But they did a TED Talk and they defined it. Humor is a benign violation of a norm that surprises you. So you have to be able to define it to build the structure of it. It's a benign violation of a norm that surprises you. It has to be benign because nobody can get hurt. Garza, if you and I walk down the street and we're buddies and we've known each other for a long time and I trip and fall, you would probably start laughing because, oh, you're all so clumsy and you do these kind of things. Then what happens if I get up and my arm's broken? You stop laughing, don't you? Because then it's not benign anymore. And this is part of the question of how far can you go? If I break my wrist falling down, it's not funny. Once the wrist heals again, it's hysterical again. Because what we do as people, we love to show our scars to people. We don't show and don't want people to see our open wounds. So if it's important to somebody, the open wound will kill any sort of comedy. But once it heals, it's great. Business humor is just simply safe surprise. You're just trying to create smiles on people's face every single day at work. And if you can do that, you'll be the best leader they've ever had at work. So there is an actual process as to why people laugh and how they do it. It takes me about 6 hours to walk you through it. But did that help at all?
Yes,
Okay.
It did. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, surprise is a big element. The flip that I talked about earlier today helps you with surprise. The flip is just taking it and going ridiculous off the other end. But most people wouldn't think that the tire could think. So a key element of humor is the understanding that don't focus on the meaning of the idea, focus on the meaning of the words. That's a huge piece. You have to break away from reality to kind of surprise people with that.
Can you unpack that a little bit? To focus on the words, not on the idea. So would we be going very much into like linguistics and not think about the entire meaning and what it has already for us?
Well, I'll give you an example of an old joke, right? And maybe this will lighten it up a little bit, so people, the light bulb will go off. Here's an old joke, a little bit sexist, but we're going to do it because it's the only one off the top of my head. My wife is an excellent housekeeper, right? That's the setup to the joke. Well, when I say, I'm painting a picture in your head, when I say my wife is an excellent housekeeper, what picture are you thinking in the head? What do you see when I say that?
June
I'm
Cleaver.
super,
June Cleaver. Yeah, go ahead, Garza.
I guess when I heard old and then like wife and then housekeeping, it reminds me of like all these women who has to like work in the house and I'm like,
Pearl necklace. Yeah, pearl
Clean
necklace.
house.
Nice, clean house. Is there any are the pictures on the wall, are they straight?
It's a perfect example of the Febreze commercial.
The Febreze commercial. Very, very good reference. Very good reference. There's probably a car in the driveway, a little white picket fence, all these things. Did I say any of that? I just said my wife is an excellent housekeeper. So I used a couple of phrases to let you paint the picture in your head that I want you to see. So that's the thought process that people have after I say, my wife is an excellent housekeeper. Now, the full joke, I built this picture in your head. Now I'm going to destroy it because that's what you do. That's how you create the surprise. My wife is an excellent housekeeper. When we got divorced, she kept the house. So the phrase housekeeper means two different things in both pictures. And so what you do is you build a picture that you want your audience to see, and then you destroy that, which creates the surprise, which creates the laughter. If I say, I've been seeing someone, what do you think of it when I say that? What picture do you have? That's kind of like a first romance, oh, it's so nice. They're seeing each other. That's great. That's fantastic. I've been seeing someone. That's wonderful. Oh, I love that. That's so cool. New love, right? Is that what you're seeing? Anybody else go different on that? Because the joke is, I've been seeing someone, but you can't tell much with binoculars, really. So it goes from being a cute, romantic thing to a stalker joke. So these things that you do when you create humor is you are painting a picture and then you crush that picture, and that's where the punchline takes you, and that surprise creates the humor. And it's usually based on a word. Seeing someone, two different meanings. Seeing someone as in dating versus seeing someone as in stalking, and I've got you through the Venetian blinds right there. So that's kind of how humor works. Adam, you got a question?
Yes. So just to follow up on the aspect of humor, one that I always use is my granddad always used to say that I was born in a fog and I was missed. I was 7 years old before I got the joke.
Yeah.
But just my question for you, Ray, and forgive me if it deviates from the true theme of today's talk, but in terms of getting speaking engagements outside of Toastmasters, it's something I've been thinking a lot about since I got my DTM. And whenever I go to sessions within Toastmasters where they bring someone who does this, they always say, oh, well, you have to craft your message. And it's sort of like a full stop sentence. And they don't tell you how to go about doing that. They'll speak about fees, they'll speak about, but when they say, well, how do you do that? Well, you have to craft your message, and it's like ... They never go. So can you maybe speak to that, or possibly can we connect to sort of maybe have that discussion offline if it's not appropriate for this forum?
So if you go to that Kiwi Live password Zoom, there's a link to my calendar, and go ahead and click the link, and we can talk about that. But speaking outside of Toastmasters is really what I think most Toastmasters should do, because it's a different world out there. The real world doesn't say, "Oh, Adam, I loved your speech. That really sucked, but you were so good in how you said that." They don't use the sandwich technique in the real world, and you don't really know how good you are until you get outside of Toastmasters. And that is a great question about crafting your message, but it's probably longer than a couple of minutes there. I'm more than happy to talk with you outside. And anybody out there that has questions, my calendar link is on the thing that I put in the chat, and I'm more than happy to have those conversations with you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yep.
but let's be real clear. The goal in Toastmasters is not to speak to other Toastmasters. We're not practicing so that we can talk to 10 people at the back of a Denny's. We're practicing so that we can do TED Talks, so that we can go on the Moth, so that we can speak up in business meetings, so that we can speak at business conferences. And if you tailor everything you do to the Toastmasters audience, and you let Toastmasters determine whether you think you're doing well or not, Toastmasters are always going to tell you you're doing spectacularly. That's what Toastmasters do. And that's part of the safety of coming to the Toastmasters meeting. But that's not going to give you the kind of feedback that's going to help you to grow.
One of the best kind of, so I work with several people that are pitching venture capitalists to get money, and one of whom is a Toastmaster. And when they first came to me, one of the first, let me do this, they started with pitch with Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. And like, okay, first thing we got to change is right there, right now. And by the way, there's nothing in the rule book that says you have to say that. It's just a 97-year-old rule that you have to use in a contest. So some little old man in a lime green jacket that's judging you won't take off 2 points and make you come in third instead of first. So I suggest when you give your speeches, when you give your table topics, leave it out until you get in the competition. Then don't open with it. Blend it into what you're saying. Make it seem natural there. Is that a pet peeve of mine? Yes. And you just heard it now. Okay.
But it's easy to blend in the middle. And that's when it hit me. Fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, have you ever been hit in the face by a duck?
Mother ducker. No, and when I was in the regionals, I did the first part of my speech and I said, Madam Contest Chair, have you ever donned a cape to make this world a better place? Hold that thought, fellow Toastmasters. And I just went into that thing. So your ability just to weave it in is really a cool thing. It makes it different. And if you put something in front of it, Adam, you're doing a good job. Yep. I think we kind of went past the time, didn't we?
Yeah, we're over time.
Okay. That means we're getting paid double for this, right?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. We love having you. It's like, I think it's 12 a.m. for some people here, but we love staying here. Guests, those who are joining here today, would love to hear either your thoughts or some closing remarks. And if there is nothing, we'll close it here. Any closing thoughts from anyone? Last remarks? Your golden chance to speak if you want to.
Yes, I have.
Scouts come home, so.
I have a question, if I may. Malcolm here.
Yeah, yes, please.
Yes, I was just in a contest and I was trying out my speech where I was using this new feature on Zoom where you can put a picture, you can control it from within the Zoom program, and then I could put my image wherever I wanted to put it. I thought this is a great idea. So with my speech, I put a little illustrations, and I thought this is going to be really neat and all that. But I didn't get placed. I thought I did such a good speech. What went wrong? What did I do wrong?
I'd have to see the speech to be able to answer that honestly.
Well, the concept, yeah.
One of the things that when you take a risk with something, so Toastmasters International tells you not to use a fake background, but then they reward people that use fake backgrounds sometimes. So you really don't know what to do. It's a crapshoot with Toastmaster judging. There are 350,000 Toastmasters, and for you to win, you have to beat out 350,000 people that a bunch of them are really, really good, and you don't know what it was that made you come in second or third. Here's my biggest tip that I learned. I think I learned this from Dennis, actually. It was the most eye-opening thing I ever did. For district finals, I volunteered to be a ballot counter. And when you're a ballot counter, you see all the ballots and all the ugliness that is Toastmaster judging. The reason I was a ballot counter instead of a judge is I had a friend who was in the contest that day, and he gave a great speech on a depressing subject. And there were 20 judges that day. My friend came in first on 5 ballots. Number 1 on 5 ballots. The other 15 ballots, they didn't even mention him. So what I learned that day is that it doesn't matter if you win on a ballot. What you got to make sure you do is be on every ballot.
Yeah.
That's what makes the winner. Yeah, Dennis.
The winner typically is not the person who gets the most first place settings. It's the one who gets the most second place settings out there when you add up the points. Because sure, you get 5 ballots, 15 points. Hey, hooray. But nobody else mentioned him. Somebody else, all 20 judges put him second. He gets 40 points. You see, so yeah, I strongly urge everybody to be a ballot counter at the area, division, and district, and do it several times. And you'll be amazed the insights that you're going to learn. And Malcolm, all I can tell you is I did my humorous speech in District 57. I took second place to a guy who literally just got up and started telling stories about what it was like when he was a kid going to the movies. I later saw him do essentially the same speech in quotes, but it was completely different because all he was doing was rambling. But he was a charming old guy. Everybody loved him. They gave him first place. Did the same speech in District 101. I took first place. My tall tale, in District 4, went all the way to the finals. One of the other contestants came over to me and he says, I want to talk to you now because I know you've won and everybody's going to be gathered around you and I won't be able to talk to you after they announce the winner. Yeah, that's so nice of you to say, because I believed him. I thought I had won. I thought I killed at that. I didn't even place. Why? Because of the judges. And once again, I did that same speech later on in District 101, and I took the district. The judge might have eaten a bad piece of fish that day.
Yeah, I was a judge that day, and I was one of the guys that didn't vote Dennis in. So
that's right.
That was it was kind of. Yeah,
you have absolutely no control over the judges, and so when you go into a contest, keep that in mind. You might win, you might lose. The important thing in your mind is to be sure you stick the landing, like in gymnastics, that you land, ta-da, you did everything the best you possibly could. And if you don't win, come back and try again.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I said the only other thing I did wrong is I said, good morning, everybody, instead of fellow Toastmasters on the. I hate saying that though.
Malcolm, I just want to say, let it go. Don't worry about not placing.
No, I'm just trying to learn. I'm just trying to learn. That's all. Don't worry.
Yeah, the most important thing is that you spoke.
Yeah.
And that's an honor. People want to hear you.
Right.
People want to hear your inspiring speech or entertaining speech or whatever. Just keep
Right.
speaking.
Oh yeah.
Did you
I
get
know.
better?
You have a lot to offer.
And the fact that you got up and spoke is an accomplishment, because most people are terrified of speaking. And having judged several contests, I don't sit there and say, what does the person necessarily look like? I look at the judging form. What am I grading them on? I listen to the speech. I watch them. I don't grade them on technology. I listen to the speech. Is the speech moving? Is the speech touching? Does it meet the criteria? I judge fairly, and I don't judge based on if I know the person who's speaking, if I'm in the same club with them, or in the same area. I listen to their speech, and I'm really rooting for everybody.
But if you had a little sort of pictorial sidebar, so that went along with the speech, what would you think, that was good or so or not?
Did you like the speech you gave? Did you get better at it?
But the pictures, if you're putting pictures but with the speech.
Toastmasters does not recommend you use virtual backgrounds and those kind of things, but people use them and they've been successful with them.
I'm not sure you're absolutely right about that, Ray, because definitely I have seen in the international finals, people have used visual aids. And now we happen to be on Zoom, so your visual aids have to be in Zoom. But if you're going to use those visual aids in the international contest, they had better be bang on important and really enhance your speech. Because if they distract in any way, that's a good way to get kicked out, even if everything else about your speech is absolutely perfect.
So not this year, but last year, the woman who came in second had the cards, right? You know, I didn't do this. While her speech was going on, she held up physical cards. But both years, Toastmasters recommended not to use virtual background. They didn't say you couldn't.
Yeah.
But they recommended. And I don't think there was anybody in the finals that did. I didn't really watch it, but I don't recall seeing that. So what you're doing is if you say, you know, I'm going to use these backgrounds, even though Toastmasters, the people that write the rules, that put the contest on, say, I probably shouldn't do that. Are you going to win? Probably not. It's like saying, don't you go there. Don't hit my wrist. Well, why? Because I'll shoot you. Then they hit your wrist and you get shot and you wonder, why did I not win? Right? So you have to listen to the boss. Now, here's my biggest pet peeve about, well, maybe not the biggest, but close, about people that speak outside of Toastmasters, people that speak for business. When you walk in front of a group, do not say, good morning. Welcome to the meeting. I'm so happy we're here. Because in business, when you go up in front of a group of people at 8 a.m, what if they didn't have a good morning? And they look at you immediately and go, this is not a good morning. You have no idea. I hate the fact that I'm here listening to you and you're so god darn perky, it's pissing me off. You know, I had kids get up early today and they walked all over the laundry with their muddy shoes. They put a cat in the dryer. They hit go with it, and we had to get them outside. So I'm running to get them outside. We get in the car. I'm getting in the car, and this guy cuts me off. And the guy cuts me off, and I'm so pissed at this guy that I want to pull up next to him and I want to flip him off. So I go and I pass there and I get up to where they are and I get there where I can flip him off, and he won't look at me.
Yeah.
So what I do is I try, look at me, and I miss my exit. And now I'm 10 minutes late for work and dropping the kids off. So it's not a good morning. And what did you say? Give me my coffee, you fool. So that's why I never start a speech with good morning or a presentation work with good morning. Welcome. No, just get to the action. Your first step is to get to the first step. Done. Next.
Good. Great.
Now, read your audience, definitely. I did give a presentation at Arthur Young one time. I walked in, I read the audience. I said, hey, everybody, sucks to be here, doesn't it? Huge applause.
Could I
haven't
use
been-
that in the contest?
I wouldn't use that in the contest. No.
Well, the attorney that I talked about earlier said something like that to the jury. Oh man, you guys, I know you hate being here. I'm like, nah, I got a week off with nothing to do. I'm excited to be here. So he immediately didn't win me over.
Right.
Yeah,
Got to read the audience.
Got to know the audience. You got to know the audience.
Wonderful. And looking at the audience right now and looking at myself, it's 12:10 a.m. for me. So I definitely need to go to bed and let you guys go as well. Thank you so much, Ray, Dennis, and Yuki for being here, for being our very lovely, interactive, awesome speakers. We would love to have you again with us. Come and join us at the Intercontinental Toastmasters. That's my club. That's why I'm promoting it. I'm the VP. But anyhow, would love to have you again. And I'm not forgetting Abhijit, what he told me to say, announced that the next workshop is how to do the judging. And it's by our wonderful Dennis Dawson, who was the speaker today. So come and join us. And it's November 13th. That's the date, the correct date. Yeah, thank you again. Drop me an email. I'll promise I'll respond to that. Send an email to Ray, Yuki, Dennis. I think they are willing to respond to you guys too. Book sessions with them, and have a wonderful night time. Abhijit, thank you for all